Tim. Welcome to Watch One. Thanks for logging on. Today we're looking at the IWC Portuguese Perpetual Calendar reference 5021-19, 44 millimeters in 18 karat rose gold. You can see this Portuguese Perpetual on our website, watchyouwant.com. Buy it if you like while you're there. And if you like these videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Watch You Want Inc. Now you can see on my wrist 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference. This Portuguese Perpetual Calendar wears with all of the size, stature, all the presence and charisma, as well as classical proportions for which the Portuguese series has been known since its controversial 1939 debut. Again, I'm going to emphasize my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, and while this watch has the stance of a modern oversized timepiece, the great appeal of the Portuguese is that it's not a voguish nod to passing fads. IWC pioneered the oversized watch at the tail end of the 30s with the original Portuguese reference 325. This watch is not voguish, but true to its history. Since the 1930s, the original oversized timepiece, it is not just the style with this watch, it's the only authentic expression of the Portuguese. So the watch has incredible stance and presence, and IWC does nice things to make it wear well on a smaller wrist, because having encountered oversized proportions before other watchmakers even conceived of the idea, IWC realized early on that if you want a huge watch to fit on a human-sized wrist, you really need to pare down the lugs. And if you're going to pare down the lugs so physically they don't extend far beyond the ends of the case, you need to give the lugs a sculptural compound curvature so they have plenty of physical presence, but as they extend, they also curve sharply at the same time. And as a result, you can see how this watch, with its strap capable of pulling straight down, almost perpendicular to the plane of the horizontal part of the case, it'll fit on a very small wrist, far smaller than mine. Ultimately, this is not going to be an ergonomic quandary for those who like the Portuguese. You're going to be able to wear it. It's just going to come down to a matter of whether or not you're into a big watch with a lot of character, a lot of personality, and a ton of history. But this Portuguese 5021-19 has more than history and presence behind it. It has horological content. I want to focus briefly on the last of the ergonomic aspects before I dive into that horological content. IWC is smart enough to pair this watch with a classically styled square scale alligator strap with a nice amount of bolstering around the lugs that tapers off rapidly as it approaches the flexible portion under the soft side of the wrist, and the deployant clasp here is up to the standard both of the Portuguese history and heritage, but also IWC's reputation as a true manufacturer of the highest stature. Beautifully made, in Schaffhausen as ever. You can see that even between the polished and the brushed elements, as well as the substance, IWC expresses its take no prisoners, no compromise, engineering and craft ethic. Very massive. This is a clasp befitting a watch of this stature and quality. Moving inboard to the case, I want to focus on elements IWC uses to keep the watch elegant in spite of its absolute size. Now you can see the bezel is nicely concave. It actually slopes inward as it slopes down, so rather than being a cone or a dome, it actually pares itself down and it juts out at the very end to meet the flank of the case, so visually reducing the mass as well as adding a step and an element to define all that gold surface area. IWC keeps this case differentiated, animated, and avoids the appearance of a monolithic block of gold. Other elements that are used to break up the size of this watch are the contrasting finish. Now you can see the concave bezel. It features polish on each of its steps, and then there's a horizontal brushed feature that breaks up the flank of the case to prevent it from appearing too sheer, too broad, too massive and undifferentiated. Very well done by IWC. As big as this watch is, it's big but it's delicately rendered and artisanally so. You can even see that in between the lugs, another contrasting finish, this time of vertical brushing as opposed to the horizontal, is used to add another element of differentiation and distinction. There's a lot going on with this watch before you even get to the dial, but the dial on this variant is the star of the show. Now in classical Portuguese fashion, you do have the Arabic numerals, mid-century Art Deco style, delicate vintage style foy hands. Now you have a minute track around the outside entirely in dot indices, a nice rich differentiating and visually articulated decision on IWC's part That prevents the watch from having too much negative space around the periphery and provides a nice transition from the black of the center dial to the gold of the bezel. But all of the elements are of the highest quality, and in the name of differentiation, IWC sort of tag teams the gold applied elements with textural elements. You can see that each of the sub-registers has a little marked step to it, so it's sunken into this big black dial. The combination of the black and the rose gold is very powerful, very striking, very stark. It makes this watch impossible to miss. And more so, the fact that IWC makes each one of these nicely balanced symmetrical sub-registers distinct in its own way adds another element of complexity to ponder as you enjoy this timepiece. Now you can see the IWC marquee down here at 6 o'clock on the month sub-register. That's probably the least adorned of all of them. And you can see how the power reserve as well as the radial date are demarcated and differentiated from both the moon phase and the constant seconds and day of the week indicator. There's a lot of detail going on here, and it continues at 12 o'clock with a double moon phase. Now this is what really visually sets the 5021 apart from the 5022 and the 5023, which feature a more conventional aperture moon phase. This one features a double moon phase featuring a geosphere textured globe at center, flanked by two separate moon phase indications. Now as you know, we're in the midst of a supermoon and a full moon at that, so you have each of the indications full and, of course, vertically opposed. There is a guilloche pattern around that inner geosphere guilloche, so the texture, the detail, and the attention to detail are a huge highlight of this dial. As striking as it is, even from arm's length, as close as you want to get, it'll continue to impress, but in different ways. Now, it's the IWC caliber 51612 that finishes the job. You've been stunned, you've been staggered, you've been impressed, and maybe even captivated by the dial and the case, or the history of the Portuguese line itself. But this movement is at the heart of the beast, and it's key to sealing the deal if you think you might be interested in this type of timepiece. Now, I want to talk about detail once more. You can see how the concave bezel is matched by a concave caseback curvature. Very clever. This watch never ceases to impress with its symmetry, with its parallelism, its artistic attention to detail. It's a thoroughly realized work. No sign of that greater than the movement. Now, the 5000 series debuted in the IWC model line on the Portuguese automatic back in 2000. It was their modern-day, oversized automatic winding caliber to essentially power a new generation of IWC complications. Fundamentally, it replaced both the 89 and the 85, which were respectively automatic and hand wind movements. But what you see here is that it really breaks new ground with a 7-day power reserve, actually 8-day with 1 day held in reserve, so to speak, so the watch will start beating the second you pick it up if it does run down, and to prevent the mainspring from getting into a zone where it no longer keeps good time. It automatically locks itself out after 7 days are exhausted, but that means this is a watch you wind once per week, if at all. The automatic winding system is phenomenally efficient. This is an element that's a heritage piece from IWC. The traditional Albert Pellaton pawl-based winding system, you can see the pawl wheel as well as the twin pawls themselves that actually lock or engage the winding system depending on which direction the rotor swings. This should keep that 7-day power reserve topped off. It's very durable, being one of the few movement or automatic systems, I should say, that has inherent shock protection built in. The fact that it is an IWC signature enhances the aura and the sense of connection this 5000 or 51612 has to IWC's mechanical engineering history. Likewise, craft history is upheld in the finest fashion with a handmade Breguet overcoil hairspring. This is, again, part of that class of watches that is not certified as a chronometer, but can easily meet chronometer timing standards. Because of the Breguet overcoil, because of the free-sprung index, you can see that the watch has the ability not just to shake off timing variation caused by shock, but also because of the overcoil, the ability to keep accurate time regardless of what position it's sitting on your wrist or what position it might be sitting on your dresser or in your watch box at night. 7-day power reserve, free-sprung, Breguet overcoil hairspring, Albert Pellaton winding system, 7-day power reserve with a 1-day lockout for accuracy and rapid recovery on the wrist when you pick it up and it starts ticking again. a moon phase, a perpetual calendar, and of course this is a very complete perpetual calendar, not just with the month, the day, the date, and the moon phase, but also the year, the decade, and the century. That is the definition of a comprehensive calendar, and this really is a comprehensive watch. In terms of complication, it has it all. In terms of attention to detail, case design, and finish, it has it all. Ergonomics, again, it's an ace. And even if you want to look at the movement from an aesthetic perspective, with circular Côte de Genève, gorgeous baseplate perlage, gorgeous polished screw heads with chamfered slots, this is not a watch that leaves anything to be desired. To top it all off, it's also unbelievably visible and open for an automatic movement. You can see almost all of the works at any given time. It's not blocked off like so many 7750 and 5100 style automatic movements are. This is a fantastic effort by IWC. Since 2003, the perpetual calendar has been a staple of the Portuguese lineup, and thanks to the success of the basic concept, in conjunction with IWC's fantastic movements, that's likely to remain the case for a long time. You can see this IWC Portuguese Perpetual Calendar 5021-19 in 18-karat rose gold on our website, watchyouwant.com.